Let's start with this, Coach. I just said it to Carter. I feel like the last 2 years, it's just like so wild to wrap my head around the fact that you guys had this senior Latin team. COVID hits. You're the youngest team in college basketball. Last year, you're still kind of rising from the ashes of that. So who is this team now as you enter 2023?
Well, it's interesting. Then you take into account that we've been displaced. And so now we're coming back from being displaced. So I actually thought about that this morning during my jog, that these guys have really persevered and have been resilient. And last year, if you look at it in the first half of the season, 1-7, 4 games by the last possession at home. And then you flip it to the second half of the season, regular season, and then 2 all-league players, Carter and Jose, go down, and these guys still go 6-2, 4-1 down the stretch. So because of all that, that's where I really put my hat and say to myself, okay, what do we really have? Who really are we? Now we're certainly much more experienced than we ever were, maybe before. And so I really wrap my head around that, and I say to myself, why this team, why now? And when we've had championship years, we've had this type of team. We've had a team that's been much older. We've had really good guards. We've had interior guys that can score the ball at the rim. We've had a special player, Bo Beach, Garrett Sams, and Carter Hendrickson, that could really do both and can really stretch the floor, especially with size. So with all that in place, 14 teams in the league. The league is certainly much different, much like it was when I first got here 14 seasons ago. And because of that, I think we really have an opportunity that's been placed in front of us, and we're grateful for it, especially with this group.
You bring up such a unique point about how that team with Garrett, that team with Bo, that was a lot of like the same senior group together. I had to ask Carter if he identifies as a senior, because I know Jose is technically like a sophomore or a junior or something like that. So do you still feel though like it's similar to that 2020 group, where like it's the same group of guys that have been together for a couple of years, or is it a couple juniors, a couple seniors, just because of the nature of the COVID year and everything else that came along with it?
Not quite as collective as that group was, because they were literally together. Because remember, JT sat out, so he was actually part of that team. But Jose sat out. Dorian redshirted. And then you got a guy like Carter. Jerry's is in his 4th year of college basketball. Jonathan and Jaden and Chaz, they're in their 3rd year of college basketball, though technically they're COVID sophomores. So this group has been together a long time. We do have a lot of age that has come around for us, and now last year we've garnered so much more experience. So I think when you put all those pieces together, I think that gives you an opportunity and a chance. And that's really all you want. And that's what they did. They put us in positions in the first half of the season. We just didn't come through in those 4 home games. And then in the second half of the season, we flipped the script. So healthy is huge. Everybody in America wants to be healthy. There's only 2 teams in our league in the last 8 years that have won 3 championships, and we're one of them. There's only 2 teams in the league that got 2 all-preseason players, and we're one of them. So if you put all those things together, we have a chance. Sort of like Dumb and Dumber, 1 in a million, yep, we got a chance.
I was going to say kind of like what I think you guys need to teach the Jags a little bit, those one-possession games, because like you said, you guys did flip a script last year.
So I'm going to correlate that at some point, because I know most people just got back from London. And when you look at those games and you look at how that works, and then you get to the second half of the season, those similar type games, we were winning. We were winning those games both at home and on the road. We're the only team to beat the 2 teams that finished first in each of the divisions. So when we got whole the last 10 games, and then Carter goes down with the Tommy John injury, and then, of course, later on, Jose breaks his finger. So I think when you look at the Jags and you talk about the Jags and what that looks like, you really can't – it's hard to simulate that at practice. You can do 2-minute offense. You can do goal line offense. You can do all those things you want, but until the lights come on and there's 86,000 people and the reality is the reality, that's what I'm excited about, because this group has gone through that experience, and that experience is going to bode well for us as we move forward.
You believe that this is Carter's final year?
So he's one of those guys. I remember there was a running back at Oklahoma. I think his name was Overstreet. And it seemed like he was at Oklahoma forever. And like he seems like he's one of those guys. It's just he's been here forever. And when we kind of recruited him, when he came in on his unofficial visit, Bo happened to walk in the gym, and they were kind of together at that time. Bo had just been leaving, and you're thinking to yourself, man, and then you look at him, and then all of a sudden, it's been 5 years. And to our credit, you're talking about an incredible human being and someone that really has taken his roots. His whole family has come to Jacksonville. He loves Jacksonville. His girlfriend, who he's been with for a long, long time now. And so what I really love about Carter and about how the whole thing has come to fruition, it's been exactly how we kind of laid it out for him. And, of course, he's been part of that 2020 championship team, and now he's at the cusp, at the top, at the senior, at the oldest guy, so to speak. And now he's been given the reins to lead this group as well.
I know you're obviously concerned about all other 13 teams in the league, but for you guys, knowing that your crosstown rivals made it all the way to that championship game, how much does that kind of light a little fire under your guys wanting to be the Kings of Jacksonville this year?
Well, I don't know about those guys. And really, if you look at the 20 games that we played against that team, we're 14-6. So it's kind of hard to say one thing or another. And the one thing I'm really good at is putting things in perspective and making sure that we never put the cart before the horse. And we've got to make sure that we understand that it's all about being 1-0. And we've always said that. We've always preached that. We've always talked about that. And because of that, these guys understand that. And if we're worried about that, those 2 games, so to speak, and not worried about the other 16, that's not very smart, and that's not going to bode well for us. So we have to have a little bit of intelligence when it comes to that, and we have to make sure that we stay in our lane and we handle what's in front of us.
Last question from me. You are notorious for that non-conference scheduling of yours. Walk me through your non-conference to start the season and maybe what you learned from the gauntlet of a year ago.
Well, last year may have been the hardest ever, not just because of the number of games, but because of the way it was compacted. This year, we have something that we've never done before. We have 3 top 5 teams. 3 teams that are preseason picked to be in the Final Four. And when you talk about Gonzaga, everybody knows who they are. When you talk about Kentucky, everybody knows who they are. And then Houston is kind of like the team, like, who are they? Well, they've kind of been around, they've kind of been there, but if you look at them historically in the last 5 years, now they're going to the Big 12, like they've been unbelievable under Calvin Sampson. They're sold out for our game, and they're going to be 3rd in the country when we go in to play them. So it's definitely something that these guys are excited about. It's definitely something that we've really grasped. We have great gratitude for what we do and the way in which we do things, and we also understand that this is what it is. This is what we do. And again, it goes back to your previous question. We have to be concerned about Gonzaga first, and then handle that, and then move on to Washington and the likes of Pitt and Duquesne and those others that I mentioned.
You ever been to the Kennel?
Have not. Seen it a lot on TV. 7,000. It's going to be extremely loud. And Houston sold out. Kentucky sold out. Washington will be their first home game right before a football game. That'll be probably sold out. So these guys they still say that Grand Canyon last year was probably about 7,000, was probably one of the greatest venues that they played in and people they played in front of. So pretty exciting for these guys, and something that they get 30, 35, 40 years old, they look back on, they're like, wow, we played at these places.